ready to go. Hello, everyone. Hello, ladies. I am back again. I know that you thought that I had kind of dropped out and I wasn't here, but I am here. I've been busy behind the scenes and so busy that I found another wonderful human being, a sister that you're going to love to listen to her story. I'm excited to bring you her story, and I wanted to present to you Itiah Thomas. Welcome,
Hi.
Itiah, to our group. I'm excited because, as I was saying earlier, Australia is not one of the first places. By the way, Itiah lives in Australia, and I'm really excited because we don't have, I'm not sure how many other women in our group are in Australia, but it's not one of those on the ring countries. So I'm excited to get to know you a little bit and how you made it to Australia and how you're doing, first of all, with this quarantine. What is it like here right now for you? What's happening?
Yeah, so I would definitely say that I am able to speak from a place of privilege, in that my family's okay, my friends are okay. I still have my job that I'm able to do remotely, like from home, uh, and have, yeah, my health. And the only first world problem that I have is like literally that I can't travel somewhere. So, and I acknowledge that that's not a space that others get to come from. So, with that as the caveat, say that I'm actually quite in a space that I'm thriving during this time period, and getting the time and the reflection that time for reflection, time for courses that I wanted to take, and really to create things that have been on my list to do for a while, as well as between me transitioning between jobs. Australia as a whole, I also think it's also a quite privileged country, in that the healthcare system is not overwhelmed. There are the government is communicating. We are a lot more spread out in terms of like density of people. So there's a lot more space to move, which is also making it like transmission is less. And it's not as restricted as maybe some other countries. So there haven't been many cases. We haven't been on like the a lot like greater extreme of lockdown, in the sense that we can still go out to exercise. We're just keeping our distance in that space. So, yeah, I'm really grateful to be able to report that personally and as a country, it's going pretty well. But I also acknowledge the position that I'm in.
Are you required to wear masks?
No, and most people are not actually.
Right.
I'd say.
Well, that's good to know because that does take some getting used to. That here in Mexico, we are being required to wear masks, and it really is very uncomfortable uh, and awkward to have to do that. So that's good to know. What is it like being? I'm going to go forward and then backwards. But what is it like being black in Australia as a black woman? How are the Australians to foreigners? How do they?
So, yeah, I'd say I probably also have, will speak in a caveat in that I think I've experienced probably a different experience maybe than others would, in the sense that I'm American, so Black American, and and probably have and from a socioeconomic and education class, so to speak, that is would be considered respected, I guess, in a Western world. So I think in general that probably puts me in some different circles than maybe some other people may have the opportunity to be in, as a Black person here. So for instance, I'd say that I probably would be treated differently than if I was from an African country, and from where like English is with an American accent is different, you know, is held with a different regard, I would say, probably, is if I had to speculate. And I'm not living in like an enclave of other Black people. So community wise, I'm not, from living with a particular like ethnic group or nationality. So I also think that that's a different experience maybe than than others maybe here. So I personally, so with that all as the caveat in the background, the context, I personally don't find it being particularly overly like attention given to me, like as a Black person and as a Black woman. I feel like for the most part, just another person. And I'd say the things that I could attribute it to any number of things that people do notice me. So not to say that I don't get noticed, you know, at all or draw attention,
Sure.
but that can be from a number of things. One, being a woman in general, being of color and looking something, you know, different in terms of surrounding. Maybe there's something I'm wearing. Maybe someone thinks I'm attractive or unattractive. Maybe there's something on my face. Maybe it's that I'm with my older white boyfriend. You know, like I have no idea exactly. Maybe it's a combination of that. As to like what plays into that and our family dynamic as well. So I'd say I, on the whole, feel really comfortable living here. I feel probably more comfortable than I did living in the States. And I am able to have as good of, if not better, standard of living.
Awesome.
Than I
So
did.
now the backstory, a brief backstory. How did you make it to Australia? You're originally from?
I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York.
From Brooklyn. What part? What part of Brooklyn?
Crown Heights.
From Crown Heights. Okay. So how did you make it across the river there to Australia?
Big river. So look, Australia has always been kind of in my top 3 places to visit. I don't know how I got there, to be honest with you, but it was up there with Greece, Italy. And I had an opportunity while I was on a Mediterranean cruise to meet a group of Australians that I befriended, and they were like, hey, come and visit. And I took them up on that offer. So a couple of I knew people in maybe 3 of the spots that I visited. But I basically came to Australia and New Zealand for 3 weeks, probably the year after I met them, or a couple of months after I met them. And kind of bounced around. And at that point, I had already kind of felt like I was like starting to get to the point where I wanted to consider living outside of the States anyway. So I was really open to seeing, like, when I visited the different cities that I visited, as to if I felt I could live there, and if there was a sense of like what neighborhood I might enjoy. So that was in 2013 when I first visited. And when I landed in Sydney day 1, felt so connected to it. It felt like it was a very strong bond, as if I had lived there in a past life. I was living in San Francisco at the time, and I felt like it was really quite similar. Like I didn't feel such a jump, a different, a leap. So I was pretty much convinced after 3 days in Sydney that, yep, I was definitely going to make this my home. I went back to the States for about 2 years. And in that time, became more and more disconnected from the States. I tried moving to different states. So, and yeah, it wasn't really working. So at that point, I decided to take so it wasn't that I went back to the States for 2 years. I was actually probably less than 2 years. But it took 2 years from coming to Australia the first time to me ending up landing here to live. So in that time period, like I said, I moved states, but then I also embarked on this 8-month trip around the world because I was like, I wanted to see if there's any other place that spoke to me as strongly as Sydney did the 2 years prior. So when I left the States, I knew I was leaving and I was not coming back. I didn't exactly know where I was moving to. I just left my stuff in a state where I could have it sent to me, but I like basically closed down my life. I did leave with the opportunity, like I took a sabbatical from work, or I told them I was taking a sabbatical, and that I'd come back in 10 months. But really, I set that up to as like the only safety net that I left behind if this really didn't work out with this trip and me moving to Australia. So so along in that 8 months, I didn't find another country that spoke to me as strongly, or another city as strongly as Sydney. Barcelona was second, Amsterdam was third, but not as strong of a connection. So really, I'd say when I landed in Sydney, I had a quite easy transition. So it was just really, really quite seamless. And for me, it spoke to me as to like, that was definitely the place that I needed to be to start out.
Wow, that's amazing. And I love to hear the story of how you just knew, and everyone that I talk to uh, confirms that, myself, I've been out for about 15 years, but it was the same. I just woke up one day and knew that I just didn't want to be there anymore. It's just this knowing that you have that just comes in your life that this is it. And you're not really sure where it comes from. You just know that you feel it and it's a part of you, and you're like, I gotta go. I gotta go, and I gotta go. So that's really interesting.
It just, once you start putting that out there into the universe, so many things just start like,
True.
Moving in that direction to help
True.
manifest that. And
Oh,
I've seen that.
definitely. And I always tell folks that there was no Facebook, back when I was planning my exit. Facebook was just in its mere infancy stages. And so there really was no groups, no place to hang out and say, hey guys, what is it like? There were these, random chat groups that were out there on the internet. And, it was just a lot of people that were mostly complaining and they were miserable. There really wasn't a solid base of folks that I could say, hey guys, can I, get some advice from you? Can I bug you that, so it was kind of just like, hey, you're just going with your feeling. But like you said, I mean, if the universe is directing you, then, everything just kind of falls into place, and it usually does. So very interesting about Australia. What is your background? What job did you leave behind?
So part of the reason that I was moving was very much for a lifestyle change, and a career and professional change, also of which I didn't know what I was going to go into. I just know that change needed to happen. So when I was in the States, I was in commercial construction project management, mostly building hospitals, some data centers, biopharmaceutical plants, so like heavy tech. And I when I was leaving the States, I was like, yes, look, I've finally been able to like wrap that up and put that behind me. And I'm going on this new adventure. And I got to Australia, like I started a new business. And then I wasn't able to go down my first two routes of being able to self-sponsor. So I had to actually end up looking for sponsorship, which meant the easiest way was to get back into construction management. And I cried for 2 weeks because I thought like it was part of the reason that I left. It was to branch out into this new journey, particularly in the career space as well. And so I was starting to feel like there was a bit of failure in that I wasn't able to make that shift, or I was, but that wasn't able to keep me, that alone wasn't able to keep me in the country. So but then I thought about it. I was like, well, would I rather be in construction in Australia or construction like in the States? And I was like, well, we know what construction is like in the States. I might as well just bite the bullet to be able to live in a place that I want to live in. So look, I got back into the industry, built 2 hospitals in the process, and then was able to actually make a transition. So then I left the construction industry after 11 years being in it. And last year, or no, actually in 2018, October 2018, took some time to travel again, took some courses, and transitioned into user experience design. So now that's what I do. So I've been designing some software for an HR product, and now next month I'll start with a UX design consultancy. So I definitely didn't come over here with a job or even the intent to stay in the same career. A lot of the companies that I have, like all of the companies that I have started, and sometimes some of them closed, but others remain to have, as well as the career I'm in now, happened upon me moving, or after moving to Australia.
Well, what is the residency process like for someone that is interested in living there?
Right. So, look, you can get over pretty decently easy as like for your first year at least, with a working holiday visa. Um, I think they have upped the age to 35, as an American, as well. Well, not just as an American, like a lot of, it depends on the country you're from, but it used to only be like you have to be in by your 31st birthday. Now it's you have to be in by your, yeah, I think your 35th. And you were allowed 1 year, only 1 year to begin with, but I think now you can do like kind of a 3 month something with the land and get like your next year. So that's if you're trying to go in through the working holiday visa route, which is how I started. And then I was able to apply for permanent residency because two things. One, I was able to get sponsorship from the company, but also I was able to come over basically in a like a skilled migrant code that they have, because of my background in project management. So, which means that like your profession has to be on a list of things that they see as a skills gap in the country. And so like they have different visa classes and types depending on different professions, and then criteria that you have to meet, to be considered as one of those skilled migrants. So if I had been like my first route was to not have to be sponsored at all, by either having my own company, which they did away with pretty much the year that I had come here. I tried to actually get in kind of on my own merit, but because my undergraduate degree wasn't in the thing that I had been doing for 11 years, that didn't count. So I couldn't self-sponsor kind of in that way either, under my own merits as a skilled migrant. So that's why I had to go in through that way. I believe that there's also, like if you're over 35, that there's some availability either for you to do like kind of a retirement visa or be brought in by someone who's already living here that's willing to sponsor you if you're like family in some way, or if you're getting it, I think there's a potentially like a business visa as well if you have like a certain amount of assets, a certain amount of money and things that you're willing to invest in the country. So I'm
So
not
it's kind of like a standard setup, yeah, based on your income. What about your family? Do you come from a big family? Have they been to visit? Are they coming to visit? Do they love you being there? Do they want you to come back?
So yeah, actually, well, though I'm an only child on my mother's side, I have a half brother. My family in general is large, so my mom has come to visit twice, and is already saying like when this is all done, she's coming for a month. She's like already mentally booked her ticket, and the other family members are pretty much like, this is just a long haul. Not really down for it. Let's either meet in the States or somewhere else in the world, which I'm also okay with that. We've done that a couple of times as well. They have acknowledged that I'm not moving back. I have not lived with them since I was 13. Because I went to boarding school and college and blah, 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 moved to States for work. And so I've been priming them for a number of years in that, like, I am definitely not, like, New York is not where I would be moving back to. And so it just progressively got like into a different time zone by moving to California, and then just like a very, very different time zone by hopping over. I did a lot to practice with them along the way, of making sure that they were equipped and comfortable to stay in contact with me. By that, I mean helping them to create Facebook pages, helping them to practice Skype, because Skype was a thing when I when I left.
Yeah.
Helping them to get WhatsApp accounts, like to make sure that, like I said, their concern was more about how can I communicate with you and reach you in a way that, like, if I can't physically reach you. So yeah, it was important to make sure that they were comfortable in that space as well, because if they weren't, then that was going to make my life hell as well, because there's my mom would, like, threaten to she's threatened to contact the Vietnamese embassy once because I didn't check in enough time, but I ended up in Ha Long Bay with, like, no service on, like, a 2-day junk boat.
Oh,
Island and
I can relate as a mom. I know it's rough. It's rough. So I'm assuming that you're single, no children.
So I do have a boyfriend, but
Okay.
we're not married. He has children, so
Okay.
I'm like an instant mom, like, in the sense that he has 3 children. So
Okay. Well, I wanted to ask you something that I haven't asked any of the other ladies that I've had the opportunity to chat with. What is it like, as a single woman coming from the U.S., going to Australia? What is the social scene like as far as for singles? Single, how are the Australian men? And what can you expound upon that?
wow, we're gonna need more time. So basically, look, I would say, like, the dating scene was not amazing when I got here, and it was actually probably the worst dating scene that I had experienced. And having lived in, like, 5 states, where I was like, while I was in the States, and I was like, oh no, surely you can't get any worse. And then I got here. Um, and I think that was probably more so because there's just, like, a bit more, like, reservation and more so they're not, just not, like, the courting scene isn't really there. Like, I think it's largely due with the fact that a lot of people have grown up in going to single sex schools, and so that, like, interaction from a younger age just didn't seem to really happen as naturally, I think. Which has played into a bit of, like, repression and and whatnot. So this is, like, my take on it, right? And so, yeah, like, I've had some situations happen that I'm like, this has never happened in, like, any other country that I've been in. And not to say that they were all Australians, but they were living in Australia, and also not even to say broadly Australia. I was in Sydney, and I think that's also a different vibe and a
A
different
different
space,
vibe,
right?
sure, sure.
And so, and also, like, women outnumber men, and they're all, like, women are, like, very well taken care of themselves, at least definitely, like, in Sydney. And so there's, like, beautiful women running around, like, and not running around to say that, but beautiful, intelligent, smart sort of women are there are many to choose from. And so that also plays, I think, into the mentality. At any rate, so mine is definitely a gem. and
Okay,
and
good for you.
so I wouldn't say he's one of the typical by any means. He's definitely a gentleman, and I'm really grateful. And I met him through mutual friends. So that's also a big thing here, is that, like, there are very much people stay in their circles quite a bit.
Okay.
So people tend to end up in relationships because they had mutual friends, or they worked in some kind of circle, or they went to school in some circle in some way. So it's not as so I'd say people are a little bit more difficult to meet, like, kind of in a bar, and, like, not even just in a romantic relationship, but I mean, like, as friends, right?
Sure.
um, are a bit more difficult to, like, meet casually out. It seems like it has to be a bit more of an organized thing, or some connection that would have happened prior to. So yeah.
Well, I guess it just depends on the city that you're living in, which is going to depend on
Yeah, I'm in Brisbane
right.
now, and that also has a different vibe, a bit more laid back, but also probably a bit more family oriented. So, I mean, not to say that there aren't singles here, but there are definitely a higher rate of people who are in a more family setting.
Okay. Okay. Um, you know, Black women thriving abroad is all about encouraging and motivating women who are going to embark on in this important journey. And it is all about us that have made the journey and in how we're living. We're not just living, we're thriving. And I just wanted to ask you if you could give some advice to someone who is watching that is grappling with the thought of, having to leave. I know after this whole, virus thing is kind of died down, there will be a lot of women that are going to start to think, wow, this is a time for me to make a move sooner rather than later. What advice could you impart to someone who's thinking with, or has the idea that maybe it's time to make a move?
Yeah, definitely. So I'd say one is that it's um, you maybe still in your head about it, and I'd say finding a community and a space that are amongst other people who are either contemplating it or have done it as well is really helpful, because um, if you're anything like the community that I was in kind of prior to, it wasn't something that other people were doing. And so other people were, imparting their fears, their assumptions about what that process would be like. And when you're already kind of still in your head trying to figure out if it's something that you want to do, being in a space of openness where people are, like I said, either on that journey as well or looking to embark on or have embarked on that journey is really helpful. I'm personally, probably like more of a planner than not. So I like researching. I like writing out schedules. I like writing out checklists. So all those things help to keep me organized. And when I feel that I have an action plan and am organized in things that I can cross off or and tick off or, have found out information on, then that puts me at ease personally. So I'd say whatever it is that puts, someone who's considering going on this journey at ease, then, but also like in a state of preparation, then, whatever that method is for yourself, definitely employ it here and through this process as well. I'd say that be open to, but so with planning, the flip side of that is be open to things not going according to plan. So as much as I wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, I have to have like all of these things figured out before I do this, right? Some things you don't even know that you don't know until you start doing it and you start like going down this rabbit hole. So like being comfortable with like being adaptable or building up your ability to adapt and be comfortable with change and uncertainty is definitely a mindset thing that I would encourage people to work on trying to start adopting if they don't have it. Because like I said, things can not go according to plan, or like I said, I thought I was going to come here and be able to get in one way with a visa, or stay rather in one way, but had to get creative about some other ways. So I'd say, yeah, it ended up shifting careers. So being open that, maybe what you think you might go there to do, it may not be the thing that you end up doing. And in doing so, like you'll meet quite a few people who, are just in that space as well. And you, like I said, as we were discussing earlier, you see how that ball starts to roll. So those would be like kind of my main go-tos in terms of like a preparation space, and to start being in the mental and physical state, and understanding as well that there's grace to be given to yourself in this process as well, in that you will figure it out.
I am going to send you a big virtual hug on behalf of all of us. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It was nice visiting with you, and maybe we'll chat back with you again after all of this this craziness is is over with. Thank you so much, Itiah, for your time today. We really
Great.
appreciate it. Thank
Thanks for
you.
having me.
Bye bye.